All right, so if you're getting into coding, you've definitely run into CSS. And at first, it seems so easy, right? It's just colors and fonts, making things look good. But as we all quickly find out, it can be one of the most frustrating parts of building a website. So today, we are going to tackle that head on.
I absolutely love this quote because it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? You can learn the basics in like an afternoon, but then spend weeks just trying to get one little thing to line up correctly. If that sounds familiar, trust me, you are not alone. It's pretty much a rite of passage for every single person who learns to code.
Oh man, we have all been there. Just staring at the screen. You change one little value, you hit refresh, and absolutely nothing. Or worse, something completely unexpected happens. That exact feeling, that frustration is what we're going to talk about. We're going to break down 5 super common mistakes that, once you know them, will literally save you hours of that headache.
So let's dive into mistake number 1. And honestly, this one is probably the smallest, but also the most maddening of them all. Just missing punctuation. We're talking about tiny little characters that are basically the grammar of CSS. If you get them wrong, the browser just throws its hands up and has no clue what you want it to do.
Just look at this. The difference between these two is so tiny. On the left, see that? There's a single missing semicolon after the color property, and that's it. That's enough to break the entire rule. But then on the right, the fixed version, you just pop that little character in, and bam, everything snaps right back into place. It's kind of crazy how something so small can cause so much trouble.
You know, a great way to think about it is that semicolons are like the periods at the end of a sentence. They tell the browser, okay, I'm done with this instruction, move on to the next one. And the curly braces, those are like the paragraph that holds all the sentences for one specific thing. Get this down, and you're honestly already halfway to writing much cleaner, much more reliable code.
All right, so moving on from tiny punctuation mistakes to a big picture one. This is a classic point of confusion for beginners, the whole margin versus padding thing. They both make space, sure, but understanding where that space goes, well, that's the secret to getting your layouts to behave.
So to really get this, let's use an analogy that I think makes it super clear. Imagine any element on your page, a picture, a block of text, whatever, is a framed photo hanging on a wall. You've got space inside the frame, right, between the actual photo and the wooden edge. Then you've got space outside the frame, pushing other pictures away from it. And that right there is margin and padding in a nutshell. And this brings us to the legendary CSS box model. It looks a little technical, but the easiest way to think about it is from the inside out. You start with your content, that's the photo. Then you add padding, that's the space inside the frame. Next comes the border, the actual frame itself. And finally, on the very outside, you have the margin. That's the empty wall space that separates it from everything else. So let's just nail this down. If you want more breathing room for your text inside its box, you're going to use padding. If you want to push 2 different boxes away from each other, that's a job for margin. Just remembering that one simple thing, inside versus outside, is going to solve, I promise you, so many of your layout problems.
Okay, mistake number 3. And this one is huge, especially today when everyone has a different size screen. It's when you build something that looks absolutely perfect on your big desktop monitor, but then you look at it on a phone, and it's a complete disaster.
And this slide just shows you the problem perfectly. On the left, when you say width 900 pixels, you're basically yelling at the browser, this box is 900 pixels wide and I don't care what you say. But a phone screen might only be 400 pixels wide, so yeah, that's not going to work. The flexible way, on the right, using 90%, is much nicer. It says, hey browser, just make this box 90% of whatever screen you've got. It's built to adapt.
And that right there is the core idea of what we call responsive design. Instead of trying to force your website into one rigid size, you build a flexible system that, well, it responds to whatever device the user has. Using units like percentages or other cool ones like VW and REM is how we make sure our sites work for everybody, no matter where they're looking at it from.
So why does this matter so much? Well, because these days, a massive chunk of your visitors, maybe even most of them, are going to be on a phone. And a website that isn't responsive, it's not just a bad experience. It's basically like putting up a closed sign. People can't use it. Being responsive isn't just a nice little feature anymore. It is an absolute must-have for any modern website.
Okay, next up is a mistake that seems totally harmless when you're making it. It's not going to break your website right now, but it can create an absolute nightmare for you or anyone you work with a few months down the line. I'm talking about forgetting to comment your code.
I mean, look at this. The difference is like night and day. The code on the left, it's just a giant wall of text. Sure, it probably works, but good luck figuring out what's what in a hurry. But with just a few simple comments, like on the right, it's instantly organized. You can scan it and see, there are the navigation styles. It's like putting chapter titles in a book. It just makes everything make sense.
And here's the most important thing to remember. Comments are not for the computer. The browser completely ignores them. They are for humans. They're little notes to future you. Because when you open up a project you haven't touched in 6 months, you will be so thankful you left yourself a roadmap explaining what on earth you were thinking. It's a tiny habit that really separates the good coders from the great ones.
And for our fifth and final mistake, let's talk about something a little more advanced, but it is so important for bigger projects. This is the habit of writing these super long, super specific selectors that end up being fragile and just impossible to deal with later on.
This right here is a perfect example. That selector on the left is what we call hyper-specific. It will only work on a link that's inside a list item, that's inside a UL, that's inside... You get the idea. It's so brittle. If you change any single part of that structure, the style just breaks. Now look at the one on the right. It's a simple, clean, descriptive class. You can reuse it anywhere, it's easy to read, and it doesn't care about the structure it's in.
This whole idea boils down to something in CSS called specificity. You can kind of think of it like a scoring system. The more complicated and specific your selector is, the more points it gets, and the harder it is to override with another style later. By keeping your selectors simple, using classes, you keep your code flexible, and you avoid getting into those frustrating battles with your own CSS.
Okay, so let's do a super quick recap. What did we learn? 1. Punctuation is everything, so check those semicolons. 2. Know your space. Padding is inside, margin is outside. 3. Be flexible. Use responsive units so your site works everywhere. 4. Comment your code. Your future self will thank you. And 5. Keep your selectors simple. I promise, if you master these 5 things, your whole experience with CSS is going to get so much better.
And look, the most important thing to take away is that every single developer, no matter how experienced, has made all of these mistakes. They are not failures. They are literally just part of the learning process. The goal isn't to never make a mistake. It's to learn something valuable from each one. So, I'll just leave you with this question. What's the next mistake you make going to teach you?